The me that awoke this past Tuesday morning was, much like Link, shirtless, sleep-deprived, and in desperate need of reinvigoration. Never had I dreamt that my need would be met by Nintendo's unanticipated announcement of Hyrule Warriors Age of Calamity. Happy holidays to me. See, I had not expected to devote the entirety of my spare time to the original Hyrule Warriors when it came out back when I was still in college. Nor did my friends at the time expect to be replaced by Pixels. But, well, can you blame me? Now with a whole new game set in an as-of-yet unexplored portion of a canonical timeline, I've got all new Pixels to replace them with. Yeah, I'm sure all the other YouTubers out there will wonder whether we'll see those champions slaughtered before our eyes, or if Mipha's gonna, make out with Link or something. But I will be pondering which characters could be added to my collection of potential friends. And, if these candidates were added in, how would they stand against the armies of Calamity Ganon? Let's explore the possibilities. As of now, we have seen a whopping 6 characters in action, the princess and her entourage of champions, Link included. While we have yet to witness them in combat, King Rome and an unnamed Sheikah woman, likely to be young Impa/Pyrrha, also made appearances. That would leave a whole world worth of candidates to choose from, right? Wrong! You see, despite Breath of the Wild's otherwise expansive cast, few characters from the current world would have lived an entire century beforehand. If we were to select our roster from Hyrule's super senior citizens, we'd be hoping Hestu alone would be enough to shake things up. Thank Hylia that we do not have to rely on the musical Giving Tree to be our only newfound fighter. Original characters aside, the first Hyrule Warriors game allowed us to play as characters without a role in the storyline. Characters like Agatha only appeared for a moment, while others like Medley and Marin were not even from games in the same timeline. If we utilize the method of unlockable, non-canonical characters, the Zelda universe is our oyster. But let's narrow it down to one specific group. If we base this theory off the assumption that Link and Zelda will be aided by the 4 champions and either Impa or Pyrrha, then we can count on their descendants to follow in their footsteps. Sidon for Mipha, Teba for Revali, Riju for Urbosa, Yunobo for Daruk, and Paya for whatever Grandma gets the spotlight. And who better to kickstart this discussion with than everyone's favorite fish stick? Fish stick. Fish stick. Whew, boy, okay, I've got to be really careful with that one, lest the Found Girls get their yaoi senses tingling. The Prince of Suna fell on Sidon. Let's be honest. Would Nintendo dare to leave Sidon, the man with a third of all Breath of the Wild fanfiction written about him, and over 12,500 pieces of fan art made in his honor, don't ask me why I know that, out of a fan service-centric game? I think not. It's not whether Sidon will be included, it's how he will be included. Despite his relations to Mipha, the two share little in terms of personality, and their fighting styles would be no different. From what little we've witnessed in the Age of Calamity trailer, and the glimpses of potential in the Champion's Ballad flashbacks, Mipha seems to prefer keeping her opponents at arm's reach whilst darting around the battlefield, a style befitting of a pole-armed fighter, and a withdrawn soul. But Sidon has never been one to shy away from confrontation. Sidon's upfront and personal approach to relationships, be they benevolent or antagonistic, would be better suited to a hands-on style. Not to mention, this is the man who slaughtered a massive Octorok because it was harassing some fishermen. He's not shying away from a fight. That means that a spear wouldn't suit him. In fact, we never even see Sidon wield his sister's weapon once in-game. Instead, we are told 3 things about Sidon's combat capabilities. 1. He's a competent swordsman, as evidenced by the blade sheathed at his hip. 2. He's the best swimmer amongst all the Zora. And 3. He's a, shockingly, get it, skilled archer. For this moveset concept, we'll be nixing the lattermost fact, as we've already got Revali and Teba to contend with arrow-wise. Instead, Sidon will be a sword-based character wielding the Zoran brand of blades seen in-game, with a penchant for water-based combat. While on land, Sidon will act similar to a swashbuckler, swinging his sword about in wide arcs to clear out swarms of foes. But otherwise, Sidon is not made for land walking. The boy's too big to navigate gracefully. To remedy this, one usage of the Strong attack would allow the prince to summon a transferable pool of water beneath his feet to traverse the battlefield in. While submerged, Sidon would be notably faster and more acrobatic, leaping about from pool to pool in order to avoid, ensnare, and bemused his enemies. This half of his moveset would allow for greater mobility at the cost of a lesser damage output. But hey, at least it harkens back to his Zoran ancestors. That's all for His Maritime Majesty. Our next combatant is a bit less bombastic, but no less capable of blowing away the competition. Rito Warrior, Teba. Unlike the other dynamic characters throughout Hyrule, Teba remains a man of mystery. Few words and fewer actions would leave us with little to form a moveset concept with, were it not for one important place. The flight range.
But Homestead,
You say?
the flight range is for archers, and Revali already uses a bow.
Good guess, but actually no.
Need I remind you how many characters use different variations of swords in the original game? I'm gonna go out on a limb and say 2 distinct styles of archery won't end the world. While we never see Teba's personal flair in action, thanks to acting as a distraction during the Vah Medoh battle, we do have a hint. The Swallow Bow. This longbow spawns in the makeshift shelter where Teba makes his in-game encampment. While this would most likely act as Revali's starting tier weapon, with the Falcon and Great Eagle bow succeeding it, we can use its characteristic fast-paced firing rate and long-distance specialization to our advantage. While we've seen equally little of Revali in action, his general demeanor and momentary display of power mid-trailer make it clear. This is a performance for him. He's not just aiming for one man. No, he's bringing the house down on everyone. That understanding allows us to assume that his attacks will be tailored to wide-range spread shots and over-the-top maneuvers. But Teba is a seldom-speaking lone wolf with no one around for company. Who's he showing off for, that kid he abandoned back home? Even Teba's training course is focused on striking targets one by one with deadly precision and rapid speed. And this is why we'll design him as a long-distance, speed-shooting marksman tailored to taking down individual targets, one headshot at a time. Thankfully, Teba has a predecessor to model his style after, and it's not one of his kinsmen. In the original Hyrule Warriors, Zelda's rapier struggled to decimate mobs, but excelled in demolishing a single enemy. In this iteration, Teba would follow the same principle, preferring to keep focus on one monster at a time, but doing so from a distance instead of up close. Should this game allow for greater mobility than its forerunner, Teba would take advantage of the opportunity to pick off opponents while airborne. Even if he is too. I believe that about wraps it up for our fine feathered friend. Next in line would be... Child Chief of the Naruto, Makila Riju. Bow down, Urbosa, your adorable descendant is here. Riju holds a special place in my heart for being perhaps my favorite major character in all of Breath of the Wild. And for good reason. Unlike the little glimpses we see of characters like Teba, the various quests, diary entries, and relationships pertaining to Riju shed a significant amount of light on her character, and her capabilities. The most obvious aspect of Riju's skills, or lack thereof, is that she's a tad too adolescent to make use of her nation's sacred equipment. The Scimitar of the Seven and the Daybreaker Shield would be entirely too large for her to wield without falling over, which works out well for us since the footage of Urbosa reveals that she uses them instead. Even the Thunder Helm happens to sit a bit precariously on her cranium. But whereas her people's weaponry is still out of her grasp, her handle on the helm is second to none. And that's what will allow us to make a moveset. In-game, we know that Riju mastered the Thunder Helm's power instantly upon using it for the first time, which is no small feat, even for a chief. I want to couple this innate control she has over this lightning elemental affinity with the destructive potential of her ancestral fury to grant Riju a wide range of electric-oriented magic. While Urbosa's moveset will undoubtedly be supplemented with her trademark lightning strikes, Riju's fighting style will instead be centered around bending Urbosa's fury to her will. From calling down singular bolts of light to sending out shockwaves to paralyze those surrounding her, there is plenty of Fulgomancy to make use of. But there's one problem. We can assume that we'll already have an infantry magic user, if our eventually awakened princess is anything to go by. We need a way to diversify Riju not from her ancestor, but from her liege. If electricity is wild, unpredictable, and fast as, well, as lightning, why not give her a mount to match? Why not give her Patricia? Riju can call upon the speed of her trusty steed, Patricia the Sandseal, to guide her through the battlegrounds. This form of navigation will allow for a constant stream of movement, providing Riju with the opportunity to chain attacks from one foe to the next in a similar manner to how an electrical current will always seek out its next point of influence. While she would struggle with individual opponents, much the opposite of Teba, no one could match her abilities in mobility. Even if changing lanes isn't so easy. But hey, no one does that well in the real world either, so what does it matter? Riju might be the youngest of the bunch, but I know there's at least one bigger baby in this batch of candidates. Patriarch in training, Yunobo. Yunobo gets a bad rap for being the cowardly lion in a cast of scarecrows. He's timid, a tad spazzy, and one to flight, not fight, in the face of danger. This led to a lot of due criticism of his character, but thankfully for me, I love me a scaredy cat cinnamon roll. While we know that Daruk, Yunobo's ancestor and Centennial counterpart, will utilize his, sword? Hammer? Hammer sword? Mersword? Boulder Breaker to grind his foes into dust, Yunobo never even acknowledges its existence. But Yunobo's not really a weapons man. Or a man. So we're going to take his combat style in a different direction. While Yunobo prefers to avoid direct confrontation with enemies, our one-trick pony still has an ace up his brace. Cannonballs! Every time we needed to take down a limb of Vah Rudania's, Yunobo would curl into the fetal position, load himself on into the ancient t-shirt cannon, and catapult towards danger with Daruk's protection as his only hope of preventing a lava-bound faceplant. Characters like Daruk and Darunia favor slow, hard-hitting fighting styles, which work well for the Goron. But not all of the big guys move like molasses. Heck, does no one remember the Patriarch's race from Majora's Mask? You better get moving in that minigame! While uncurled, Yunobo can still pack quite a punch with just his fists alone, but his animations would be clunky, clumsy, and undoubtedly comical. He's more flailing than fighting. But with one use of his strong attack, Yunobo will ball himself up and bound across the chaos. He could utilize a variety of previously seen skills, such as growing magical spikes or pounding into the ground to cause lava to erupt, in order to wreak havoc while keeping himself safe and his foes at bay. With Yunobo now ready to rock, we've only got one more character to roll out. Heirloom's Overseer, Paya. Now I know what you're saying,
But Homestead, Paya doesn't have an ancestral champion.
to which I will admit that you're right. Yeah, cut up all you can. But that doesn't mean she doesn't have a Centennial counterpart. The only difference between her and the other four aforementioned heroes is that her counterpart still lives in the present timeline. If the trailer is anything to go by, we will be allying with either Impa herself or a younger, older? I don't know how that works. Form of Pura, as seen in the throne room. So if one of Paya's grand relatives is going to take part in the Great War of Old, then by Hylia, Paya deserves to take up their mantle too! But there's only one problem. We never see Paya fight. And yes, while that same sentiment can be said for almost everyone on this list, Paya is the only one who's never even mentioned to have an affinity for fighting, that is, for whatever reason, never shown on screen. But she does possess one mystical artifact that could allow her to hold her own. The Sheikah Heirloom. Although Impa urges Link to unlock the heirloom's secrets, it is Paya who took it upon herself to set out with the heirloom in tow prior to Link's reawakening. Get it? And discover its secrets. Those secrets, unfortunately, had nothing to do with combat, but if the original Hyrule Warriors can find a way to turn batons, balloons, and fish scales into viable weaponry, then yes, we can make this futuristic 8-ball work too. I imagine that Paya could wield the heirloom in a manner similar to how Viola of Soul Calibur 5 or Mavelle Frozen from Star Ocean 2 wield their mystical floating orbs of death. Have that sucker ricochet around the battlefield, releasing bursts of ancient energy as it goes. Or even have Paya bowl it into groups of enemies. Why not let it sink into the earth like a puzzle from a shrine and cause the area around it to flip like a moving platform? Or maybe it could create a barrier to entrap foes or protect Paya, as it does with the Sheikah monks. And if all else fails, she can steal some tricks from a certain DLC boss whose name I will not spoil for those who have not yet played it. With a plethora of possibilities at her disposal, there is no doubt that Paya can stand tall against the Calamity. Until the swimsuit DLC rolls around. With these concepts now presented to you all, we have 5 viable candidates for Age of Calamity's character roster. My hope is to make more videos detailing each character's specific moves, weapons, materials, and more. So if you have any suggestions to expand on the aforementioned ideas, by all means, share them with me. Heck, even if you want to go against everything I said and would rather campaign for the Crazy Flower Lady, or think every character should be in a tingle suit, don't let me stop you. But that's enough for now. Until we meet again, have a breathtaking day, and may the goddess smile upon you.